So we're right at 7 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I just want to welcome everybody. Good evening. Douglas Land Conservancy is pleased to offer tonight's presentation, Wooed by Woodpeckers. It was the first time we've offered this, and we're excited to have great interest this evening, and we're looking forward to learning a lot from our partners at Denver Audubon. So my name is Amy Graziano, and I'm the Director of Outreach at Douglas Land Conservancy. And DLC is your local nonprofit land trust. We have been working with willing landowners and municipalities, local municipalities, since 1987 to permanently protect and conserve land. And to date, we are proud to let you know that we protect more than 26,000 acres of land in Douglas County and surrounding areas from ever being developed. So we hope that you've joined us at other activities in the past. If not, you'll have to do that. So while conservation is our mission, we also work hard to offer many hikes and educational presentations such as this evening's to our community as well. So thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you at other events this year. We only have an hour this evening, so I don't want to spend too much time sharing other information other than what you came here for. I know that to have found out about this evening's event, you have to be on DLC's mailing list or follow us on social media. So I know that you are getting invites to all of our events, and I hope to see you at some in the future. The way that we are able to continue to offer programs like this is through donations from people in attendance. So if you are inclined, we would appreciate a donation, and the recommended amount that we I guess the suggested amount is $10 per person or $20 per family. And I'm going to follow up after tonight with an email to all of you. And maybe there's a question that we haven't answered or something that we'd like to follow up on. But I'll just follow up in a quick email tomorrow. Maybe there's some feedback you'd like to offer. I'd love to hear that. And at the same time, I'll include a link to donate. Thank you. Some quick logistics for this evening. We are recording tonight's presentation. I just want to make you aware of that. Also, at the bottom of the screen, I mentioned earlier in an email that you're not visible and you can't be heard. So it's just a webinar format, which is a little bit different. We've all gotten used to the Zoom meetings over the last year and a half, but a webinar is a little different. So Susie will be our presenter, and I'm going to shut off my camera in a second and let her share her screen and do her thing. But if you have a question that you would like answered at the end of the evening and you can hold off, but you just might not want to forget, which is understandable, at the bottom of your screen, and if it isn't popped up, wave your mouse around a little bit and it will. Type it in the Q&A. And then Susie's presentation this evening is interactive, and she's going to ask some questions and ask you to respond. And if you can keep all this straight, put that in the chat. And so she'll suggest that. So chat is for just chatter during the presentation and talking like you would if everyone were around, and Q&A is to save for later. So I'm going to turn it over to Susie Hiskey at Denver Audubon and thank her for being here this evening. And then I'll be back at the end of the evening to assist with reading your questions from the Q&A for Susie to answer. So take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this presentation on Wooed by Woodpeckers, also known as drum roll, please, because we know about their persistent drumming kinds of things. My name is Susie Hiskey. I am Conservation Coordinator for Denver Audubon, and this presentation tonight is primarily made by one of our volunteers, Jamie Simo. So I want to thank her publicly for putting this together and providing a lot of the images that you'll see tonight. So Denver Audubon is for those of you who are unfamiliar with us, we are actually a local independent chapter of the National Audubon Society. That means that we do all of our own fundraising, and any money donated directly to Denver Audubon stays locally in the Denver metro area in the 7 counties around Denver, including Douglas County. And our mission is to inspire actions that protect birds, wildlife, and their habitats. And I will have a couple of actions that you can take during tonight's presentation that help woodpeckers as well as other bird species as well. And we do a lot of different programming in the Denver metro area. At the end, I'll mention a few of those for you. But we do educational programs like this. We have local birding field trips to places all over the metro area. We have more intensive trainings if you really want to become a bird expert. We have those kinds of programs as well. So tonight I'm talking about woodpeckers. They are a family of birds that include a couple other types of birds that are not necessarily found in the United States. They are the family Picidae, and the woodpeckers are the true woodpeckers, and that is the Pisinae or Pisinae. So we have our woodpecker, and they have very similar traits to each other, is a little bit different from our songbirds. The first most important trait is they have zygodactyl feet, meaning that 2 toes point forward and 2 toes point backwards. And this is what allows them to move on the sides of trees to do the foraging that they do, and the sides of houses and other locations. So this allows them to actually climb around looking for their insect prey. Additionally, they have really short, stiff tail feathers. Again, that helps them hold on to the tree and have that leverage that they need for moving around the sides of trees. Additionally, they have that chisel-like bill that's very strong that can peck into the bark of trees to get underneath where the insects are hiding. And to get to those insects, in addition to that beak, they have an extremely long tongue. And as you can see from this picture here, it actually wraps clear around inside of their head, which is truly amazing. And that's how their tongue is able to be so long to get into the cracks and crevices where the insects are trying to hide from our woodpecker friends. And to be able to do the drilling that they do, we all know about them drumming and drilling holes. They have a very specialized skull that is designed to do this. And it's very similar to the design of shock absorbers in that it has an outer case, the beak that helps protect the brain and the interior parts of the skull. The skull itself is a hard material, and there's also some spongy bone inside of the skull that kind of acts as a little bit of that shock absorption, and an elastic layer as well. They have a special bone under there called a hyoid that's underneath their neck that kind of also helps absorb that shock of that drumming that they do on the sides of trees and other surfaces. In the United States, we have 22 species of woodpeckers, and 12 of those have been found in Colorado. So I'm going to focus on the species that you are most likely to see, especially along the Front Range and in Douglas County. So those are the birds that we're going to see. We're going to do some identification tonight. So get your pen and pencil ready because there will be a test. And, you know, at this point, I am curious to know why you chose to come to a presentation on woodpeckers tonight. So if you could type into the chat just a quick reason why you came tonight. Are you interested in identification? I will be providing a little bit of information about the Great Backyard Bird Count that occurs later in February. Maybe you're interested in participating in that. Maybe you have woodpeckers in your area and you want to know what they are. Maybe, as I'm starting to see in the chat, they're causing some problems for you in your home. And that is some things that I am going to cover today. So thank you very much for your feedback. That's going to help me tailor this presentation to your interests and needs. So tonight I am going to start with woodpecker identification, especially those along the Front Range. I'll mention those that might come down from the hills, but I'm going to move pretty quickly past some of the individuals that aren't necessarily in Douglas County specifically. And oh, has somebody said they saw their first Lewis's woodpecker this weekend? I've not seen one myself. I will be talking about that tonight. So that's wonderful. And we will be talking about why they are drilling into our stucco and other types of siding and some different solutions for that. So thank you very much for providing some feedback so that I can be sure to address what you are seeing. So let's go into some identification. This first woodpecker that I'm going to talk about does live in Colorado, can be seen along the Front Range, but it's very unlikely that you will see this bird unless you go into the higher elevations. And this is the American three-toed woodpecker. Most of the woodpecker species are going to have this black and white pattern. That makes them kind of tricky to identify. So I'm going to be pointing out some things that are unique to each of the different species to help you differentiate it from the other woodpeckers. So this has, of course, that black and white patterning. And a couple of things that are unique to the American three-toed is that it does have that kind of that yellowish patch on the front of its head. And it has white spots on its wings and back, which a lot of our woodpeckers do. But that face is kind of black and has the white speckles on the forehead, kind of between the eyes, and that yellow patch you can see there. So those are just a couple of things about the American three-toed woodpecker that you might see if you go into some slightly higher elevations west of the Denver metro area. Our next woodpecker is the ladder-backed woodpecker. This one also is not always found in the Front Range. You might see it in some of the southern sections of Douglas County. It's found more south of here and in the southern United States. It is going to be located mostly in arid habitats, in mesquite, scrub, and dry woodlands. So some of those areas around Colorado Springs, for instance, and Castle Rock might see these birds. The unique patterning on this bird is that black and white barring on the back, for which it's named ladder-backed woodpecker. It looks like it has a ladder going right up its back, just those white and black bars. Our next bird, this is one that you possibly can see in the Front Range, and this is the Lewis's woodpecker. The Lewis's woodpecker is a large bird. And you know what, I want to mention the red because you'll see the red on this. And red is one of those things that a lot of our Front Range woodpeckers have on them. So I will be focusing a little bit on the differences between where those red patches are and how they show on the bird. And on the Lewis's woodpecker, it's on the face, which is very unique. This bird also has a very glossy top of the head and wings and back, kind of a glossy green color. It has the pink on its belly, and then it has that gray patch around its neck. Those are very, very distinctive. There really isn't another woodpecker in the Front Range that looks like the Lewis's woodpecker. Our next bird is also a very unique looking bird. It's the red-headed woodpecker, and it's one of the few woodpeckers that has solid patches of color. Its name is fairly easy to remember because it describes what the bird looks like. It's a red-headed woodpecker. And then it's got that black and white, large black and white patches on its wings and back, and the solid white belly. So that one's kind of an easy one to see. And we're going to see that on the Front Range and then heading east of Colorado. Our next woodpecker, okay, are you getting confused yet? Our next woodpecker is the downy woodpecker. Somebody asked about the difference between the downy and the hairy, and I am going to address that now. So the downy woodpecker is a very small woodpecker. It's about the size of a chickadee or a sparrow, so it's a lot smaller. It has that traditional black and white patterning, the solid white front. It's got the spots on the wings, and the male has a red patch on the back of its head, and the female does not. Now you'll notice, I'll go ahead and flip back and forth a little bit here, that the hairy woodpecker looks a lot like the downy woodpecker. So how do you tell the difference? Well, the downy woodpecker is a much smaller bird. Now, in your yard, and this is a bird that you will see in yards and around our neighborhoods, they are very acclimated to living near humans. So the size is one way of telling. Now, you're very rarely going to see a downy next to a hairy to know, is that a big woodpecker or a little woodpecker? So the next thing to kind of look at is the beak. And you'll notice that teeny tiny little beak. Even though it's a chisel beak, it still has the capacity to drill into wood. It's very, very short compared to the hairy woodpecker. I'll go back to our hairy woodpecker, and you can see it has a very long, strong beak. Our downy woodpecker has that tiny little beak that's shorter than its head. So that's our downy, and it's throughout the United States, as is the hairy woodpecker throughout the United States. But you'll notice that the beak on the hairy woodpecker from tip to cheek is as long as cheek to the back of the head. So if it has a large beak that looks like about the same length as its head, it is going to be a hairy woodpecker. It's also a much larger woodpecker. It's about the size of a robin, say, as opposed to the chickadee size. So that gives you a sense too, especially if you're a bird watcher and you have a lot of birds in your backyard and you have those feeder birds, you probably can see up against the feeder or in a particular tree where you watch your birds, that you can start to tell the sizes. So that's how you tell the difference between the downy is little, and the hairy woodpecker. And you can kind of think about, down as kind of a soft fuzz, where hair is often thought of as being longer and heavier. So that kind of helps with the remembering which is which. And then I just threw these pictures in. One of our volunteers sent these pictures to us. I don't know what this hairy woodpecker is doing, picking up snow, carrying it up the tree. Who knows what he was thinking, but it's just, woodpeckers are just fascinating birds to watch. Our next bird, this is the one that most of us perhaps are familiar with and maybe have had conflicts with, and this is the northern flicker. The northern flicker is going to be different from a lot of the birds we've already seen in that it typically is that brown color, and it has those really beautiful, very, very round spots on its breast feathers. So brown with the black spotting. It has kind of that black barring on the back. All of them have a black bib. You can see on all three of these images that there's a black bib. The males and the females are a little bit different from each other. And then we also have two colorations in Colorado. We have a yellow shafted flicker and the red shafted flicker. So you can see that the red starts to get a little more iffy on this one because it changes. But if you look for that brown body with those black spots and the black bib, then you know it's a northern flicker. The females do not have a mustache, and you can see here this one has, the one in the center has a red mustache. The one on the right has a black mustache. Those are the kind of the two coloration changes. The females do not have a mustache, but they all have either a black or red patch on the back of their head, and the females will have that as well. But look for that bib, and then you'll know it's the northern flicker. We also have in Colorado two species of sapsucker, which is a type of woodpecker, slightly different group of birds, but still considered a true woodpecker. This one is our red-naped sapsucker, and the nape is typically the back of the head, and this is one of those where scientists kind of, I don't know, sometimes scientists name things based on something that maybe you can't see as clearly in the field. And this is one of those cases. It does have red on the back of its head. It's not really the most obvious location of red, where it does have the red on the top of the head. It also has, the male has red under its chin, whereas the female will have a little bit of red on its throat, but it's mostly going to be white. So that's going to throw you off a little bit. But you can see the patterning is a little bit different than, say, our downy or a hairy woodpecker on its back and its wings. And it does have kind of a white patch on the front of its wing, which you can't see as clearly in these particular photos. But we have another photo coming up in a little bit to show you that. So this is the red-naped sapsucker because of that tiny bit of red that's on the back of its nape. The last species that you're learning tonight, and then we're going to test you all, is our Williamson's sapsucker. And it's pretty different from our previous sapsucker in that it's mostly black. Again, it has that white wing patch on it. The male does have the black and white striping on the face, but it's got a little bit more black on it. And then the unique feature about this sapsucker is that the Williamson's sapsucker all have that bright yellow breast underneath. Here we're seeing a male on the left and a female on the right. The female can be potentially confused for our northern flicker because it's it's got that brown patterning, but look for that yellow. You can see it doesn't have the spots like the northern flicker did. It's really got that yellow on the breast of the Williamson's sapsucker. And that's something that you will see along the Front Range as well. So are you ready for a test? Because we're going to go ahead and start with the test. I'm going to show you a picture of one of the birds we just learned about. And I'd like for you to type into the chat what you think that bird is. So here is our first bird. And while we look at the bird, I do have some of their sounds to play. So I'll go ahead and make sure I'm looking at the right bird and get my chat box out of the way so I can hit the play button. Oh, it was at the end, so let's go ahead and hit play again. And already I can see that many of you have this one right. It is the Lewis's woodpecker. You can tell because it's got that gray neck, that pink belly. Kind of a couple of cool features here in this image. So our next bird, let's see if you can get this one while I play its sound. And to give you a hint, this one is very easily named for how it looks. And those of you who are typing in red-headed woodpecker, you are correct. And our next bird, make sure I am playing the right, just to give you a hint, this is actually one of our sapsuckers. And for those of you who said the Williamson sapsucker, you have been taking very good notes. And again, you can see that yellow breast, that wing patch, that white wing patch, that yellow breast is really a clue as to which one that is. Here's our next bird. And yes, it is another sapsucker. And this particular one is indeed our red-naped sapsucker. Nice call to those of you who got this bird. And our next bird again, this is one that you will very likely see in your yards. And notice the size of the beak is a very tiny little beak. This is indeed our downy woodpecker. Good job discriminating between the two types of woodpeckers. So here's the one that looks just like it. Slightly different call, but very similar. And for those of you who are noticing that that very large beak is about the same length as the length of its head, that is indeed the hairy woodpecker. We have one last species for you to identify. Let's see if you can get this one. And yes, I know this sound because I have this in my yard as well. It is indeed the northern flicker. Very nice. You all, I'm not sure I saw even one incorrect answer. You all did a wonderful job with your identification skills. So hopefully that'll help you identify the birds in your yard. Now I'm going to go ahead and hang out here on the northern flicker for just a moment and talk about the sounds that they make. We were just listening to the vocal call of the northern flicker, but the northern flicker will also make another noise that is a communication. And I'm going to go ahead and play that now. Many of you will recognize this. And that is the drumming noise that they make. The drumming is actually a territorial call. So they make that noise intentionally to say, hey, this is my territory. This is where I'm nesting. Other flickers, stay away because this is my space. They also use that drumming noise to call their mates. So they love to do it on surfaces that make a lot of noise. And that's one of the reasons that they're going to be making a lot of noise on your houses, especially in the spring when they are getting ready to nest. They're just starting to do it, I noticed here in the last week or two. A couple of other behavioral notes on woodpeckers. Most and really all woodpeckers are foraging for insect prey, frequently on the trunks and branches of trees. Some species, a lot of species actually do have an omnivorous diet, meaning that they will also eat berries, as you see in the center photograph of the northern flicker eating the berries in that tree. They might sometimes eat other birds' eggs, small animals, and they've been seen eating tree sap as well. Tree sap is actually eaten by a lot of different types of birds, including woodpeckers, a very nutritious source of food. So they have a varied diet. We talked about some of their communication and that drumming, which can be heard for quite a distance away. And another reason that they will be doing that drumming is for nesting. They nest and roost in holes that they excavate in tree trunks. And they're considered a very, very important species for the bird world in general. Their abandoned holes are very important to many other species of bird, including the black-capped chickadee that I had mentioned earlier. Nuthatches will sometimes use the holes of woodpeckers, although nuthatches have the capacity to do a little bit of excavation themselves. Our bluebirds, the western and mountain bluebirds, they rely on the holes that are drilled by woodpeckers. They cannot drill their own holes. They have to have the space. And swallows are another bird, house wrens. A lot of different birds use those spaces. So they are considered, the woodpeckers are considered a keystone or very ecologically important species of bird because they are a source of pest control with the insects that they eat, and they create homes for other birds, which can cause problems in our homes. So we're going to talk about, and most of us have the most problems with our northern flicker friends, and they are drumming on our houses for a variety of different reasons. If they're just drumming and they're not creating any damage, that is their territorial call. They're actually calling other birds, and the louder, the better. So they will look for metal surfaces, especially to drum on, because then it echoes even larger and louder across their area. Another reason that they drill, as this particular northern flicker has done, is to create a hole to live in, basically. And I'm going to go into some solutions for how you can prevent that behavior from happening. The drilling of holes and the excavating of the wood chips is part of their nesting behavior and part of their mating behavior. A pair will work on that together. It's part of their bonding process. So it's really important for us to, as we're helping prevent them from drilling holes in our house, I'll give you some tips that will encourage the flickers, especially, to go where we want them to go instead of into places we don't want them to go. Another reason is that they're feeding on insects. If they are not drilling like a hole for them to fit into, but drilling lots of little holes in your house, it's very likely that you have some softwood and you have an insect infestation in the siding of your house. So if there's lots of random small holes, they're getting insects out. They have a very good sense of hearing, and they can hear the insects inside of the wood, and that's what they're pulling out. So you might need to get an exterminator and do some replacement of those areas. And then for some woodpeckers, especially our more mountainous species, they will store food in the sides of, in holes that they have drilled. Not so much this guy, the flicker he's not a nut storer. So he's not going to be drilling holes for that reason. But if you have a home in the mountains and the woodpeckers are drilling holes, that could possibly be that. So what are we going to do? Well, there's a lot of things you can do to help prevent the woodpeckers from drilling into the side of your house. Definitely replacing and repairing those soft wooden sections, especially if the holes they're drilling look like they're going after the insects, eliminating and repelling those insects from the house. And then vinyl siding, if you're shopping for siding, vinyl siding is a good solution. They are not going to be able to get into the vinyl siding. So that's a good solution for preventing any drilling into the home. It's not going to prevent them from making that drumming noise, but it will at least prevent the damage from the side of your home. Additionally, flashy, spinny decor can startle the birds and make them less likely to want to nest or forage in that area. You can use wind chimes, but if it's spinning and very shiny, those types of things mounted in the areas where the woodpeckers are hanging out will discourage them from hanging around, because it's just kind of startling, and they're like, oh, is that a predator? Or, oh, no, it's not. But maybe I should go somewhere else where I can watch for predators a little bit more safely. Now that's, giving a lot of credit to their thinking process, but having something to startle them is going to make them feel less safe in that location. Additionally, mounting a house. I had huge problems on this house, on two sides of the house. They were drilling holes, and they were drilling holes to nest. So what did I do? I got myself a couple of flicker boxes or kestrel boxes. They have the same dimensions, and put that right up where they were drilling their hole to build their nest. I have not had a flicker drill a hole on the side of the house since I put up those nest boxes. So I really do believe that that is the reason for them no longer drilling those holes, is because they have that flicker box up there. So mounting a house is really useful, and then protecting nearby habitat. And I want to give kudos to the Douglas Land Conservancy for protecting our habitats, because if we have an open space nearby adjacent to our property that has those, ungroomed forest with the trees that are kind of dead and dying, those are perfect places for the woodpeckers to drill their holes, live their lives out, and be perfectly happy and leave your home alone. So that's a good place to good places. So protecting those spaces by supporting organizations like the Douglas Land Conservancy is a wonderful way of helping the birds choose a better habitat. Another thing you can do, if you do have a tree that needs to be removed, cutting out the dangerous branches and leaving the the central part of the tree and maybe some of the larger branches, as long as it's safe and you don't mind the look. I have neighbors who did that, and they actually put some decorative things on the tree and mounted some metal statues, and it actually looks really cool. Some people will carve. Oh, there's another place nearby my house. It's a business. When they took down the tree, they had somebody carve like a big bear in the top of it. But leaving those places for the birds to go is another option that you potentially could have. So those are just a few of the solutions that we have to prevent them. And, here's a couple of details about mounting the bird houses, the flicker or kestrel boxes, about 10 to 12 feet above the ground or above your deck, depending on the situation of your house. South facing is often preferred, although again, I just put it right over top of where they were drilling the hole, and they moved right in, and they've lived there almost every year since. Having the 2.5-inch entry hole, and all of these specifications you can find on the Cornell's Nest Watch website. So if you just look up flicker house or woodpecker house, downy woodpeckers have a slightly different specification for the entry hole and the size of the box. So you can just look that up and search for that. And then here's kind of an important thing. I mentioned the excavation process that birds do as part of their nesting behavior. This is the time of year in January and February to fill those houses with wood shavings. And it's wood shavings or wood chips and not sawdust, but actual wood shavings. And you'll see in a video that I'm going to show here in a few minutes why wood shavings works a little bit better than sawdust would, because that process of removing the wood shavings gives them that sense that they have just created a fresh new house in which that they are interested in raising their young. So I have a little bit of information on bird cam options. Jamie Simo had a bird cam on her flicker house, and we are going to get a chance to see those pictures and watch a couple of the videos that she posted from a few years ago of the flickers nesting in her box. So you can always get a webcam. Now, I'm not that fancy. I do it the old-fashioned and probably less safe way of putting up a ladder and then crawling up and checking the nest box. I do a nest monitoring in my yard, and a nest check just takes less than 30 seconds. And yeah, I just climb up the ladder to my 10-foot, 11-foot space, peek in the top. Actually, I take a picture through the top and then leave to let them do their thing. So I have monitored as well, and there's no better way to really get a sense for what's happening and grow an appreciation for an animal than to watch them as they raise their brood of young. It's just really fascinating. Now, with having one of these flicker boxes, it is possible you might not get a woodpecker. You might get one of these uninvited guests, such as the European starling or the European house finch. That is possible, but you might just get a flicker. And here we have from Jamie Simo's webcam, we have our flicker, and I do have a few videos that I am going to show. Yes, I do want to show the excavation because that really shows, and let me, hopefully this works. And question, maybe Amy can hop on and let me know, are you able to see that? Is it working properly?
We were able to see it, but it's not playing. So
okay, great. So let me go ahead and play that.
Perfect.
So this is a female northern flicker, and you can see she's grabbing pieces of the wood shaving. Sawdust she would not be able to pick up. That's why wood shavings or wood chips are going to be a better option for a bird like this. So going on to our next one, just go ahead and advance to the next slide and see. Okay, so this is her bird has laid a couple of eggs here. And then her bird ended up with 6 eggs in total. And then she has some video of the nest hatching, and I love this video. So here's the mom, she's like asleep. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, wait, what was that? Again, kind of projecting some human emotions on that, but you can see that there's something going on there. And then I'm just going to fast forward to the spot where she moves out of the way so that you can see that, yes, her first young has just hatched. Most of our nesting birds, like songbirds and woodpeckers, the young are born without feathers. That's the case for a lot of our birds who create their nests in a nest and have raised the birds for a series of weeks. Their birds are typically born without feathers. So here she is taking care of them, feeding them, cleaning up after them. They're very clean birds. Some birds are very messy. They are very clean birds, and they keep the nest extremely clean. And here you can see in just the course of 1 week, how they've gone from having almost no feathers and growing fairly large compared to that first video that we saw, to here they are screaming and calling for food, and they're mostly feathered in just a week. They grow very, very quickly. And then here we have them climbing up to receive food at the doorway. And then this is kind of a neat video. So you can see there's these little black dots, and we are going to watch a video to see what is going on in this one. So let me just pull that over. Is this the right one? I think it might be this one. Here we go. So those are ants that are kind of crawling around on the inside, and flickers love ants. They just love them. And if you watch closely, you can see their tongues coming out. And especially these guys up, these two up here at the top. You can see them catching those ants and practicing using their tongue to collect the ants that are crawling around in the nest. I don't know if the parent brought those ants or if those ants showed up on their own. I'm going to ask her those questions. But look at those tongues popping out and grabbing the ant. Yeah, that's a very little noise. Can't hear that noise from inside the house in my flicker box that's outside of the house, so that's good. Sometimes they do drum a little bit, and you know, at first it's annoying, but now when I hear them going beat, 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 it's almost comforting. I'm like, oh, the birds are home. So it's partially just a matter of what you learn to accept and love and what it means to you. So there's the ants. And then here are the birds fledging, just really about a month later, about six weeks later, they are flying the coop. So what are some actions we can take to help our woodpecker friends? Well, first is go bird watching. Learn about the birds. And one of the things, let me see what my next slide is. Yeah, let me go to my next slide. One of the big birding events that we do have coming up is the annual Great Backyard Bird Count. All right, type into text, into the chat. Which bird is this? It's one of our woodpecker friends. Well, let's see who gets it first. The Great Backyard Bird Count takes place February 18th through the 21st. And yes, Don Smith got it first, but we have several others who got it right as well. This is the downy woodpecker. The Great Backyard Bird Count is a wonderful opportunity for scientists around the globe, around the world, to count birds all on the same day. Now, scientists can't be everywhere, but you and I can. So I really highly recommend that you go to birdcount.org, learn about the Great Backyard Bird Count and how you can participate. There are a couple of apps that you put on your phone to record the birds that you're seeing. If everybody's recording birds on that same weekend around the globe, so if you're traveling, wherever you're traveling, whether it's Florida or Costa Rica or Oregon, wherever you might be traveling to, count the birds and report your sightings, especially during the Great Backyard Bird Count, February 18th through the 21st. that goes into the Cornell database and gives our scientists information about what's going on with birds. So you are a very, very important piece of us knowing what our bird populations are doing, how they're doing. So go bird watching and download the apps, record what you see. You can also prevent window collisions. Our woodpeckers are very, especially if you have feeders, are very likely to run into windows. And that is one of the top known human causes of death for birds in our backyards. And that is running into a window. They're seeing the reflection on the window. It's like a mirror to them. They don't comprehend that because it's in a square, it's a window and not actual habitat. They're seeing the sky, they're seeing the trees, they're flying into that. And there's a lot of solutions you can do for that. You can get post-market screens to go outside your windows. You can, if you're replacing windows, I did this on my home. When we replaced our windows, the salesperson thought I was crazy. I said, the screen needs to go over the entire window and it has to be on the outside of the house. He's like, why are you even asking me for this? And I told him, because we get a lot of bird strikes on our windows, it kills the birds, and I want to stop that. And sure enough, these windows have stopped that from happening. And then there's several post-market options as well. You can go to our website to prevent window strikes and get some more information and links to resources on that. Reducing the use of pesticides. You may recall that ants and insects are a primary source of food for our woodpeckers. It's also a primary source of food for 96% of the birds that live on land, especially during nesting in the spring. 96% of our songbirds, woodpeckers, they're eating and feeding their young insects. The insects have what the birds need to grow big and to grow their feathers strong enough that they can fly when they leave the nest. So where you can reduce the use of pesticides is going to benefit our birds, and protecting habitat by supporting the Land Conservancy, by encouraging the decision makers in your neighborhood, in your city, in your county to protect open spaces that we have available to us, and ungroomed forest areas, if that's possible to have as part of the park system. Cutting the dangerous branches and leaving the trunk from dead trees, installing the birdhouses. Those are all things that you can do to help woodpeckers. Again, the Great Backyard Bird Count is coming up February 18th through the 21st. At birdcount.org. It gives you information on how to participate and what apps to install. And other ways you can support is, of course, by supporting Denver Audubon, by attending some of our programs. We do have bird watching outings, including a bird hike with the Sand Creek Greenway, which is in the northern part of the Denver metro area. It's a little far from Douglas County, but that's happening on the Great Backyard Bird Count weekend. And you can find dates and locations at our website. We also have Birding Insights, where you can learn more about birds. Getting Green Laws is talking about state laws that are happening in Colorado this year. And we have a Conservation in Colorado talk every winter. That's kind of finishing up in March, and then our spring benefit is in April. So those are all ways that you can join and participate in Denver Audubon. And with that, we have about 10 or so minutes where I will invite questions on woodpeckers. If there's anything I missed, and somebody noticed, yes, on my last one was a spotted towhee. Dawn, you know your birds. You are more than just a beginning birder. So thank you for that. So Q&A.
Would you like me to read the questions for you, Susie? Or
yeah, that would be wonderful for the people who maybe can't pull up the Q&A on their screen so that everybody can hear that.
All right, before we even start, I want to thank you. That was phenomenal. Wow, I loved it. I'm sure I speak for everyone. Let's see. I will start with, do woodpeckers drill holes in both live trees and dead trees, or only one? You know, one of those.
They will pick medium to soft woods. So it depends on the tree. If it's a hardwood tree, for instance, Russian olives, which are often considered an invasive species, Russian olives have a very hard wood. They are not going to drill into that tree. That's one of the reasons we recommend removing Russian olives and putting in other trees like cottonwoods. Hackberry tree are both local trees that the woodpeckers will like. They can drill into live trees. They often will prefer the dead trees or dying portions of the trees though, because that wood is a little bit softer. The wood chips are going to chip a little bit more. I mean, for any of you who've cut a branch, you know that it's kind of, there's a lot of sap and it's kind of, it's fibrous and tough, whereas the dead wood, it's dried out, it's not going to have as much sap. So they will do both, but they prefer the dead portions of trees. Great question.
Okay, I'm going to apologize to my computer. I hear it making these noises. It sounds like a fan goes on all the time. Sorry, I hear it. It just started. Okay, here's another one. We have had northern flickers successfully raise families in our nesting box each year the last 3 years. We had to cover the hole to the box this winter due to squirrel activity. And when will the flickers be courting and looking to get inside the box again so we can uncover it for them in time?
So now is the time. Now is also a good time because I believe the squirrels tend to do their nesting and young raising in January and February. We're now getting to the end of February, so sometime in the next 4 weeks is a great time to uncover the hole. I know my flickers are already starting to get into the nest box now and starting to do their gentle tapping that they do. And they will do their excavation and their nesting typically in April. So we're kind of getting into that time to do that. And then the other thing too, if you pack it tightly enough, sometimes the wood shavings will prevent the squirrels and other birds specifically from getting in, but the squirrels will sometimes hollow that out as well. So yeah, squirrels, I've also covered the hole in my boxes for winter on occasion as well. So yes, I'm very familiar with that. Good question.
Okay, thanks, Barb. Here's another one from Judy. Are aspen trees hardwood?
Aspens are actually a softer wood. Aspens, though, the diameter might not be quite big enough for the woodpeckers. It might be big enough for a downy woodpecker, but the larger woodpeckers like the hairy woodpecker and the northern flicker, they often need something that's, I believe I want to say it's 6 or 9 inches is the size of the box that they prefer. And I would think that the wood of a tree would be a similar dimension.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. How deep do you make the wood chips in the box?
I fill it to the point that it's like the hole is filled in as well. So that's how much I fill it. Some of them, if you go to a bird store to look for a flicker or a kestrel house, things to look for. A lot of them have side opening, which can make it challenging to fill because you literally have to take it off the wall, turn it on its side to get the wood chips in. Some have a top opening. Those are easier to fill with it still mounted on the house. And then I was just at a bird store a week ago and saw some that has a viewing window, which I thought was brilliant because it was side opening, but then it had a piece of plexiglass on that one side that went most of the way up. So there was still a hole at the top where you could toss the shavings in, and then that plexiglass will hold it in place. So I'm thinking, oh, I need to modify my birdhouses so that I've got plexiglass on that one side. And as long as you have a side of the house that stays wood and has potentially has something etched in it, really woodpeckers don't even need the etching or the ladder to get out of a birdhouse. But to have a rough wood on the inside so the birds can crawl up and down, it can be important as well. So that's something to look for in a nest box, is how does it open based on how you plan on filling it or not, and does it have a rough or a ladder type engraving on the inside so that the birds can climb up and down.
Okay, one other question. We had an acorn woodpecker hang around for about a month 9 years ago. Have you ever heard, or have you heard of others doing this along the Front Range?
I have not heard any instances, but I do believe that for sure. We frequently see cases, the acorn woodpecker, I believe, is more of a mountain bird, but we see cases all the time of a particular random individual bird who has found its way into a habitat or an area where it doesn't normally live. So yes, that is not uncommon to have a species show up that you would not normally see. So what a special thing that you got to see in your yard.
Okay, I think that is it for our Q&A. I did, wait. New one just right now. Where do Lewis woodpeckers live, and do they stay further away from homes?
Lewis woodpeckers, and I'm not as familiar with that species, so I'm just going back through my notes now to find that one, because I do have it in my notes. So bear with me while I find the Lewis. Okay, so the Lewis woodpecker is something that we could potentially see along the Front Range. And they are typically found in open woodlands. So that's going to be a forested area that has open areas frequent in it, so trees and then an open space or open meadow. And yes, they are sometimes found close to human settlements as well. The Lewis's woodpecker is one of those that stashes its acorns or other nuts into the wood. So the Lewis's is one that could potentially be drilling holes to stash its food. So yeah, good question. And I can actually, let me just share my screen real quick and
Okay, couple more questions. While you're looking, do they drill into blue spruce? I guess this is just any woodpecker in general. Go into blue spruce?
Yeah, they will. I would think with a pine or a spruce or one of the evergreen trees that they might wait until there's a dead portion to drill into, because those trees are so sappy and they're going to want to avoid the sap, both on themselves as they're drilling, as well as they wouldn't really want the sap on their young. So I think the evergreens and those trees that tend to have more sap are going to be more likely when that tree is dead or dying.
Okay, someone asked, one of the attendees who said that they saw Lewis's woodpecker, someone asked where did they see it, and they replied in Veers. And so do you just want to take a second to let everyone know that probably the premier, well, I don't want to say premier because there are so many great places to bird here in Douglas County, but the open space, which is also protected by Douglas Land Conservancy, DuPont open space in Veers is phenomenal birding habitat, and it's where Douglas Land Conservancy and Douglas County Open Space host our annual Memorial Day birding hike, and they see, I can't even remember, but I want to say 150 species every year, this group. So it's really a great time of year to get out, but also a great location. Sandstone Ranch also has had great experience with birding. And I know if somebody is on here that knows, I think it's the three-toed woodpecker, that one that you mentioned. I think that one was spotted there, which was an unusual, really special find. And so if anybody wants to jump in the chat or Q&A and correct me on that, go ahead, because I think or on this call that would know. Yes, three-toed. Okay, three toes. So if you are fired up about birding after this presentation or just in general and don't know some of the open spaces in Douglas County, DuPont in Veers and Sandstone Ranch are excellent locations that I would suggest are worth a
And one of the tools I would recommend to build upon what Amy just said is eBird, and it's just the letter E, bird. eBird.org is their website, and eBird is the app that you can download to your mobile device. That is one of the tools that is used for the Great Backyard Bird Count. And the neat thing about going to eBird on the computer is that you can then explore and you can look for hotspots. So Amy, you might want to have somebody with the Land Conservancy check out eBird and make sure that the known hotspots that you are familiar with in your lands are designated as hotspots in eBird as well.
Okay.
That in
I
eBird,
will.
hotspots that you can click on, and those are going to be places that have a lot of really wonderful species to see. And
Okay, I'll check that out. Additionally, tomorrow when I follow up with an email to everyone on the call, I will include links to those open spaces and how, and you'll be able to find directions and so on. So great. I think that's it for the questions, and we're right at 8:01. So
perfect.
that's how that worked out. If anybody has anything that they want to add, let's do it real quickly while we close here. Thank you, Susie, so much. This was phenomenal. I love our partnership with Denver Audubon. I appreciate your presentations always. Your organization is so knowledgeable, so wonderful, and really fun and engaging. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time this evening. I know we learned a lot. So anything you want to close with?
You are so welcome, and we love sharing what we know about birds, and hope that everybody out there picks one action that speaks to you, and get out there and help the birds in however you can. Thank you so much for letting us talk about the woodpeckers.
Thanks for joining us. Take care, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.